To kind of pivot gears here, talking about inflation, just how expensive everything is, it's now hovering near 5%. Americans are feeling the brunt of this harder than ever. Just trying to pay for gas, trying to put groceries on their table, rent. Mine doubled in the past 2 years. Many are saying their pay isn't keeping up with these higher prices that we see.
No, there's no doubt. And you were just mentioning literally rent doubling. How do average families today live in a city like New York? And then when all the other things you're talking about, crime and everything else, is just overwhelming. But here to discuss, we're joined by certified financial planner and author Carrie Carbonaro, and economist and professor of business at the University of Maryland, Peter Merici. Inflation, guys, they say that it's cooled. They say prices have slowed. But, you know, the Fed is still going to raised interest rates last month. And, you know, we're worried about bank collapsing, all the major banks collapsing. Carrie, walk us through this. What this means, not just, you know, for us here on set, but the average American trying to get by every single day. Tell us, how do they see this?
Well, unfortunately, you know, the Fed is probably not going to stop with the rate hikes, which is unfortunate for everyone because everybody is feeling it, like you said, in every part of their lives, from gas to food to rent to housing to cars. People are paying an absolute fortune. And I don't know, honestly, where they're coming from because it's definitely not keeping up with people's salaries are not keeping up with inflation. We had a study that came out yesterday from Bloomberg that said you have to make $300,000 in New York to feel like you're making $100,000. How do you like that in New York and San Francisco? So that is absolutely unbelievable.
I saw that exact same study. I think it said that if you're making around 100K, it's the equivalent to making 30 or 40K everywhere else.
The numbers today are just so astronomical. I think back to my parents. They wouldn't have been able to survive with these types of numbers.
No, I mean, it's scary.
Hold on.
And I mean, Peter, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Fed is planning to raise interest rates again. I mean, we are already seeing banks collapse. Is this not exactly why we had the 2008 crisis?
They need to increase interest rates further, quite frankly, because they're still relatively low as compared to inflation and to the historic norms for when you have this kind of inflation. When Paul Volcker addressed double-digit inflation, he took interest rates well into the double digits. A 5% interest rate is not astronomical. But let's go back to that Bloomberg headline. You know, rather than argue about how high interest rates should go, they're going to go up because inflation keeps feeding. The service sector continues to have quite substantial inflation. If we subtract housing and energy, which there's a lot of problems with that data, so but core services are galloping along. But, you know, Bloomberg likes headlines like that, especially on a Friday night, so keep people's eyeballs glued. I was raised in New York. I was born in Astoria. I have a son living in Brooklyn. I visit New York frequently. 300,000 versus 100 is a bit of a stretch. I would suggest to you it's probably, you know, 1.5 or 2 to 1. But it is not 3 to 1.
Okay,
I mean,
Mr.
You know,
Rich,
it's always been a great indoor sport. Hold on. The last time we went through great inflation, you had to hear it. The DJs on WABC, when that was the big rock station, you know, would talk about it every month, okay? You know, it almost becomes a contest to say who, it's like a bunch of old ladies at the old folks' home. Their husbands are gone, and they're all trying to outdo each other by saying how much pain they have in this elbow or that knee.
Well, I can't argue about that one, Mr. Merici, but I want to bring it over to Carrie and let her get a word in here. You know, I was raised in Queens. I was born in Brooklyn. Even if Peter's right, it's 200 to 1. Here in the city, it's a lot. I think it's a lot for average people. Carrie, you know, jump in. You know, I understand you're raising interest rates because inflation is so bad. Isn't that though because our government spent way too much money? I mean, look at the record spending from our government is a big part of this.
It is a big part of it. However, it doesn't matter who caused it. It's happening, and the consumers are the ones that are feeling the pinch. It's not really the government. It's the consumers that are suffering. I mean, interest rates on a mortgage, if you got a mortgage 18 months ago, you paid 3%. Now you're paying 6.25 and climbing. That is more than double. And then let's talk about just car prices, right? Everybody needs a car. So the average car price is now $700. And there's a bunch of people they're saying that are now paying over $1,000. That used to be a mortgage payment. Now it's a car payment.
Right. I mean, it's just so hard for even just to start a life and to want to, get a house, to start all these things. It's like you're so close, but you just can't because everything's too expensive. It's just slightly out of your reach, and it's so frustrating. Peter Merici, Carly Cabanero, thank you so much for coming on.